you all for being here this afternoon. The meeting is called, oh, I guess we will do a roll call. Miss Only, will you help me with that?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Here.
Kennedy, Manning, Newton, and Mr. Manning
Here.
is actually joining right now.
Okay, great. I will pause. Okay, there's Mr. Manning. Mr. Manning, I don't want to be too personal, but it looks like you've made it home, so I hope things are going well with the family.
Thank you. I do appreciate you asking. My wife's mother started today for 22 days with some radiation treatment of cancer on her leg. They had hoped to do surgery, but because of the leukemia and the treatment she's getting for that, her platelets are extremely low, so there was fear that she literally could bleed out from the surgery. So anyway, you know, it's kind of rough, but Miss Manning went back on Sunday. But we appreciate the thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Yeah, well, definitely we're thinking about you for sure. So I guess we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 22nd, 2020?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, additions, deletions, changes? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. Only to call the roll for the motion to approve the minutes.
Horatio,
Yes?
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That brings us to item 3, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt our agenda for this afternoon?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any changes, additions, deletions from staff?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. With the agenda before us, Ms. Only, will you call the roll to approve this agenda?
Ma'am. Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. That brings us to number 4, items for action. The first item for action is 4A, the Town of Irmo Intergovernmental Agreement, Engineering and Infrastructure Maintenance. That can be found on pages 11 through 53 of our packet. Is there, do we have any information, additional information from staff before we move on to questions and comments from council?
We have Director Vorner on the line, but I believe staff's recommendation was simply to approve the agreement, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll open it up the floor to my fellow council members for questions and comments on this item.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Newton.
I move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Great. It's been moved and approved. Any further discussion on this item?
Madam Chair, Bill Malinowski.
Mr. Malinowski, yes, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I would like to find out by the time this gets to council is that our June meeting, when this was in the A&F committee, I asked you a question about the fact that it stated the insurance was removed. And the administrator stated that may have been an oversight, but he would be reviewing it because he said he would not remove required insurance information. And all I see is that what we have in front of us in 2 places, it says the updated IGA includes removal of the insurance provision found in a specific section. So are we removing the insurance? And if so, why? And why shouldn't we not keep the insurance?
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to ask Director Warner to address that, if you would, please, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer? Okay, I see you.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The insurance provision was removed from the updated IGA. That was an indication in the agenda briefing to draw attention that it was not included in the updated IGA. I'm not aware of why that insurance provision was excluded. And so I would defer to county legal on that.
City Hall on the final.
I see Mr. Farrar. I don't see Mr. Smith on the call. Mr. Farrar,
Madam Chair,
yes, Ms. Newton.
as part of addressing that question, if either legal or Mr. Malinowski could point out where he sees that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. On the agenda, it is in two places. The first place I see is page 12, right above attachments. And the second place was from a the previous committee meeting in June. It's on page 14. Again, the last line right above the attachments. So it's been 4 months.
From the school.
What was the answer?
And when I was looking at the agreement, section 6 in the original document was the one that spoke to insurance. So if you, I forget what page that one's on, but that was the original section that spoke to insurance. But I will let our attorney speak to perhaps, I guess, the implications of that in the document.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is Brad Farah. So, yeah, we recommended insurance and also indemnification and hold harmless protections be included in the agreement. And that is on pages 37 and 38 of the agenda, which is unfiltered attorney-client privilege advice that somehow made its way into the agenda packet, which it should not have, but that's what it says.
Okay. I guess Mr. Malinowski, you still have the floor. Do you have a follow-up question for that?
Well, Mr. Farrar, you said the bottom of page 37 under number 1, which was a response to me.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Right. And in that particular response, it indicates that the county can request that the town of Irmo maintain appropriate insurance to help pay claims made against the county. But nowhere did I see, unless I was missing it, where it was put in that we were going to require insurance.
Right. So I don't know if it was requested or who negotiated it.
Yeah, I saw your comments there, but my question doesn't go to that. It goes to why are we not having insurance?
Yeah. Madam Chair, Councilmember Malinowski, if I may, I certainly would request that of the town. So if the appropriate motion could be to include that request, then we would make that request, because I certainly would agree that we would need to identify the county consistent with the county's legal recommendation.
Thank you, Administrator Brown.
Mr. Brown, just as clarification, we're looking to perhaps amend the original motion to include both insurance and indemnification?
Yes, ma'am. I would say the indemnification language provided by legal, as well as the request for the insurance to remain, would be appropriate, I believe. Unless Mr. Farrell says that's doing double, I think that would be my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's the recommendation. The thing is, and I think council, this is obvious, but I mean, it needs to be kind of understood. It's that, you can't have a unilateral agreement. So these things have to be discussed with the town of Irmo, and they can either say yes or no. So, I mean, we can't, you can pass a, motion saying, let's put these things in the agreement, but they have to agree to those things. So, but that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Newton.
I move to amend the previous motion that we accept staff's recommendations and legal's recommendations and forward this to full council with a recommendation to approve with the addition of requiring insurance and indemnification.
Thank you. Mr. Manning, since you seconded that, would you want to second the amendment to the motion?
That's fine with me.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the new motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll have Miss Only call the roll.
Wait, Madam Chair,
Yes, sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I'm a little late, but to Mr. Farrah's point that we're going to have to get approval from the town of Irmo. So we're sending this sending this to full council means that we're going to incorporate this language, and then we're going to send, then and only then we're going to send it to Irmo for approval. Is that what the process would be?
Staff, what would you say is the procedure that will happen once this goes to full council and then moves on from there?
I'll try to take that question, and then someone can correct me if necessary. It would be my thought that we would actually, from this committee, we would take what we've heard here, go back to the town of Irmo saying that we need these items to be included, and then Irmo would say, yes or no. Before it even gets to council, if Irmo says, no, then at that point, we're at a different negotiation stance. So, but I'll certainly, if there's a more appropriate activity, then let me know. But I would think that we want to get this through Irmo first and get them to approve it before we go to council, get council to approve it just to have Irmo say no.
Sure, I agree that the other party should see sort of every turn of the document as it comes so that we can make adjustments as we go. Would our current motion need to change to reflect how those events will unfold? Or do we have a motion that would allow us to move forward?
I don't think you would need I understand as the county administrator that this committee just said we need to include this language. So now my staff and I will go to get this language included and see how Irmo responds. I do not think you needed a separate motion to make that happen.
Great. And so once we have a response from Irmo, then it will come back to this committee. And then once we have an agreement, that will go to full council.
That's correct. That's my understanding. But I would, yield to someone who believes that process should be different.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess point of clarification, and I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cause problems with my question. I guess I would be under the impression that I don't know that you could send the agreement to Irmo for ratification, for example, which is not what you're talking about, without it coming from council, but just that you're running the language by them is the way that I'm interpreting this. Okay.
Okay. Does everyone feel clear on what we're voting on? Great. Ms. Only, will you call the roll for the current motion?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4B. I propose the change of the animal care officer's animal care officer's official title to that of animal services officer within our county's ordinances. Animal care officers tends to be a bit confusing for those in the public who do not fully understand what they do, and animal control officer tends to have a derogatory connotation. The field of animal welfare care has dramatically changed within recent years. The title of animal services officer offers a broader understanding of what their duties entail. That is pages 54 through 62 of our agenda. And I believe that the requested motion from staff would be number 1, move to change the division name of animal care to animal services.
Madam Chair, Bill Malinowski is the maker of the motion, if I may have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski.
Yes, Madam Chair, it's come to my attention that I guess you're not allowed to have an idea unless you run it past your department director and assistant county administrator or the county administrator. And based on some, I'm going to say what I believe to be negative feedback that I just heard about this morning on this, because it did not go through the technical proper channels for this. And I believe there are some people's feelings who may be hurt. I'm withdrawing my motion, and I will let those individual departments come forward with a change if they feel it needs to be done.
Okay, any other comments, questions from council?
Madam Chair, we're taking
This is-
into consideration Mr. Malinowski's comment. Since the motion is before us, I think I would move that we table the motion because it's, I don't know if we can withdraw it at this point.
Would tabling serve the purposes that we need to, would affect the, what we're trying to do here in terms of just staff being able to move forward with
Can we get
internal?
can we get a legal opinion on, can I withdraw it, or do you need to table it, or any other additional action?
So is the thought you just need more time for this to get properly before the committee?
Mr. Ferrari, what we're trying to do is just kind of completely remove this motion altogether and then let staff, I think, initiate any changes that would come.
Yeah, I mean, tabling it would be probably the most expeditious way to do that, and just, postpone. You can also call it postponing it indefinitely, but if you want to just, do you think it's going to come back at some point?
I mean, only if we really want it to, I think.
Yeah, I would just table it then.
I move we send it to the Renaissance Committee.
That motion dies for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I move that we table it indefinitely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll have Ms. Only call the roll for this item.
Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, that brings us to item 4C, which is a road closure petition for Sloane Street. That item is pages 63 through 77 of our agenda pack. And I'll just start off by saying, since this is in District 5, I've had conversations with the city council member who represents the district, our House of Representatives, South Carolina State House of Representatives member, and neighbors on the street, all who are in support of this closure. I personally had some concerns about it myself, but had a lot of conversations that helped me to get feel good about what we're doing here. And I also understand that there is intended to be bike and pedestrian infrastructure so that people can still kind of cut through the area without having to go completely around. So that's just from me. Are there any other questions from council members here?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Newton.
Thank you. I am just curious, considering that this area is wholly within the city of Columbia as opposed to Richland County, I guess I'm just wondering why this matter is before us.
So it is I could probably speak to this, but I'll defer to legal. I think it is because we have been named in this petition. So we've been named in a legal petition to consent to this closing. And so then it will kind of work its way through, I guess, the court system for this to be done, but you're correct. This is not actually a Richland County road. Did I get that right? Legal and staff?
That's correct, ma'am. It's county was named, so the county process with the ordinance is we go through all the departments that may have an interest, planning, public works, emergency services, then straight to council for, kind of a chop on whether or not you consent or want to contest the road closing. And also the roads within the geographic Richland County, even though not the territorial jurisdiction of the county. So that's kind of why they go through that process. But it is my understanding, wholly within the city of Columbia.
Thank you. I would also just note that there was a date on here that was maybe in August that requested a response in 30 days. Are we within the time frame to respond timely to this petition?
Yes, ma'am. So what happens is when the lawsuit comes in, you've got 30 days to answer. And what I always do in the answer is put that, we will go through the ordinance and statutory process and amend our answer if needed. But if it's not objected to, there's nothing further for us to do.
Okay, thank you. Since this is District 5, I'll just recognize myself and move to consent to the petition.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, I'll have Ms. Only call the roll.
Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
No.
Newton.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4D, transfer of ownership of water lines from the city of Columbia to Prisma Health. So this is a large item. It's pages 78 through 256 of our packets. Should we have staff speak to this before council kind of digs into it?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Dr. Thompson has the information on this item, and I believe he has someone that may have joined the call.
Absolutely. Thank you, Administrator Brown. Madam Chairwoman Teresa and members of this DNS committee. For this particular item, Prisma approached Richland County about acquiring water lines from the city of Columbia. The issue dates back to the 2015 flood when there was an interruption in the water service at Richland Memorial Hospital. And because of that, conversations between Prisma, at that time it was Palmetto Health Alliance, conversation between that health system with City of Columbia and with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. The idea was to move forward with building a well at the Richland Memorial Hospital campus. And as part of that, the agreement between the City of Columbia and with Prisma Health is for Prisma Health to acquire some of the water lines from the City of Columbia. Why Prisma is approaching us is because Richland County has the deed to that property in which Richland Memorial Hospital is located. And so that is background on this particular item. I have on the phone with us on the Zoom session, Mr. Tom Freshwater, who is Director of Engineering at Prisma, who could provide any further details or answer any questions from this body. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Tom Freshwater. Thanks for giving me some time to speak. Yeah, Dr. Thompson explained it beautifully. We have constructed the well. It is ready to, essentially ready to operate, but the last piece of it is getting all the agreement necessary for us to obtain ownership of the piping. We have provided a hold harmless agreement that I think you have in your packet to Richland County, which states that we Prisma Health are fully understand and fully responsible for ownership and operation of the piping. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if anyone has.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the body?
Madam Chair, if the committee members have no questions, I do. Bill Malinowski.
I don't see anybody. I also will admit to not monitoring the raised hands. So, Mr. Malinowski, I'll recognize you and then I'll check the raised hands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Freshwater, can you tell me what the cost of building this well was?
Approximately, it was somewhere close to $800,000.
Okay. And from what I'm reading in front of us, and you just stated, of course, you built the well. You've already negotiated a transfer agreement with the city of Columbia. So I'm looking at this is a done deal. And after the fact, you're just asking us permission to approve it, correct?
Going into this, we did not realize that the county would be affected or involved. So honestly, it wasn't a consideration at all until the city brought it to our attention several months ago.
Okay, was there any parking that had to be removed to build this well?
I'm sorry, any parking?
Any parking, yes, sir.
No, sir.
And were there any easements that had to be obtained or were affected in the building of this well?
Yes, sir. There were in two areas. The city of Columbia is what's the right word? Giving back or undoing some of the easements they had for access to the piping that belonged to them, which will now belong to us. So that easement is going away. And we had to work with the Dominion Power, who has an overhead power line in that area. It's not a new easement, but just had to have their agreement to do work in that area.
Okay, the reason I ask these questions, Mr. Freshwater, is when you go through the lengthy lease that was provided to us, there are areas in there that address that those specific items that permissions were supposed to be obtained from the county if leases are being if easements are being affected. Also based on the cost, you just happen to be under that cost. Parking is affected. Fortunately, it was not. And also there should have been some surety bonds to provide the landlord, Richland County in this case, that all costs of the project would be fully paid when due. And so I'm just pointing out that in the future, I believe you need to review the leases that are in place and make sure that there aren't technical violations of them. And lastly, because of all, this is a question for our legal, Madam Chair, because of all of the various amendments throughout this lengthy lease, while there is a hold harmless agreement, I saw some areas where amendments were made for other building on the grounds. And I'm wondering, do we really, do we maybe need to go back and put an amendment into the overall lease structure and not just a hold harmless agreement?
Yeah, it's certainly something we want to look at for it. You know, if it goes to full council to make sure that these multiple amendments don't, kind of swallow up the whole intent.
Okay, well, I just look forward to seeing that before all the paperwork gets to full council, Mr. Farrar. Thank you.
Ms. Horatio, this is Delia Myers. May I ask a question?
Well, actually, I see Miss Newton has her hand up, so I'm going to try to hold good.
I'll defer to Ms. Myers.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Myers. All right, thank you, Ms. Newton. Ms. Myers, you are recognized.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. Thank you, Mr. Horatio. I have a question for our legal department. I understand what the hospital is trying to do, but I guess my question is, since we, Richland County, own the facility, how would this work? I mean, I don't understand how we have, essentially, they're building a well to be connected to pipes that service our building. Who ultimately owns it and is responsible? I actually agree with Mr. Malinowski. I'm not certain that this should have gone forward this way, because as the building owner, if you're building something that's substantial that impacts a facility that is owned by someone else, I believe there should have been consent and discussions prior to the building up. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know that we've thought out long term what the legal impacts of this are. I would ask Mr. Farrer, have you looked at what's being done as well as the agreement and our ownership and what this might do to the value of our asset, or if there are issues down the road?
Yeah, so I did not review this particular one. That was going to be my next question. Is that what is the time sensitivity on this? Is this something that has to be done right? Can this be deferred?
Hey, this is Tom Freshwater. Could I make one comment?
Yes, you are recognized.
I'm certainly legal could clear this up, but my understanding is Richland County owns the land only. All the buildings and infrastructure and belongs to Prisma Health.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'll defer to Mr. Farrer.
Yeah, there's a land lease that's about 100 and something pages long. So I mean, I would, that's why I say this was not teed up the way that I normally would have wanted something like this to be. I mean, these types of questions should have been addressed before we got to this stage. I mean, that's why I'm asking, is this time sensitive, or what's the status of this?
Again, this is Tom Freshwater. It's time sensitive only in the sense that we like to have the facility available in case of emergency.
Mr. Farrer, can I ask one more question for you to put on your agenda?
Please, yes.
Whose property has the well been built on?
Ms. Myers, you cut out just a little bit. Would you repeat that?
Yes, ma'am. Whose property was the well built underneath or on, essentially?
Yeah, can somebody on the operational side who knows what this matter involves answer that question, please?
I think the answer to the question that Dr. Thompson communicated was that we found this information out when it was brought to our attention, as he just described, and Mr. Freshwater communicated to Mr. Malinowski that this item was brought to his attention by the city. So this was not something that came to administration and was approved. It was something that was brought to us in the format in which you're receiving it now, not any time prior to everything that has already happened.
Yeah, and once again, other than a desire to have this done as soon as possible, if there's something that bad is going to happen if this doesn't go to full council in a short period of time, it's not. This item's not ready for consideration.
No, not from our standpoint. Not say our. I'm speaking as the county administrator and my staff. There's no time sensitivity to this issue. As Mr. Freshwater just said, this is them building a backup plan for any concerns that they may have related to water connectivity. But that is something specific to their request, not specific to a request initiated by Richland County or its staff.
Hearing this discussion, is there a motion? Actually, I see Mr. Manning.
Mr. Ratio? Mr. Ratio, this is Delia again.
I guess, do you still probably have the floor, don't you, Ms. Myers?
I thought I did, but I'm sorry.
Yes,
just
go
a quick
ahead.
question. Can somebody just answer where the well has been built? Is it on Richland County property?
Ms. Myers, I'll try to answer the question. My understanding is that it is, which is why they brought this to us. That's my understanding. I believe that there was a conversation, and I have Dr. Thompson correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this information was sent early on to Mr. Smith. And so, you know, again, I know Brad's on this call, but I believe we forwarded this information for consideration through Mr. Smith early on.
That is correct.
Just, does early on mean before the well was built on the county property or after?
No, ma'am.
Yeah,
Again,
we just received this information in August, Councilwoman Myers. And so as soon as we received the information, I developed the briefing document, circulated through the various departments, including county legal. And so that was the process that administration followed.
Thank you. Ms. Tracio, I'll yield the floor with just one final question for Mr. Farah. I'd actually like to know as well when construction was first permitted and who permitted construction on county property without coming through the council, because I do think this, as Mr. Malinowski correctly pointed out, is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. I believe Mr. Manning is next.
So I'm still curious, where is the well?
Mr.
Yeah,
Pritchard, can you directly answer the question, please, sir?
I think if you look on page, seeing which page this is, it's page 79.
85. Page 85 is Exhibit A.
That's it. And that appears to be on Richland County property based on, I'm looking on the GIS, and that odd shaped building in the middle of that page on the right, it says Richland County is the owner of that property.
Mr. Manning, do you have further questions?
No, I'm gonna work on sort of a architect's degree here and try to figure out where it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Malinowski is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just point out as legal reviewed it in our agenda on page 78, while it went to Mr. Smith, County Attorney Smith only stated that he has no legal concern with the proposed indemnity and release agreement. It does not look like any legal individual went beyond that and looked into the actual lease.
The thing is in it all
That we have. And while they may be saying that it's time sensitive, looks to me like since 2015, they've been looking into this, planning it, actually built it without permission. And so I think to make sure that everyone is on solid legal ground, that those answers should be obtained before moving forward. But you're the committee chair, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Or do we have a motion?
Ms. Ratio, can I just add one more question to the list?
Sure, Ms. Myers.
I'd like to know when it comes back to us, if the hospital liaison from this council was aware of this, and if this was brought up to that board for a vote, and thereby, I guess, the hospital might have thought that this council was aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manning, are you the liaison at this time?
I am, so we can garner that answer. I can give it to you right now.
Would you care to speak to that?
I'd be glad to. No, this is the first I've heard of it, and I'm sorry, but my old eyes, and even with my magnifying glass on my modern iPhone, I can't tell on here where this well is. Can somebody tell me on page 85 where I'm looking that this well actually is, please?
Huh? You remember me? I was trying to buy the Suburban, you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, again, this is Tom Freshwater. Would it be okay if I answer that?
Please.
It's near the intersection of the old Sunset, the abandoned section of Sunset Drive and Broad Street.
I moved to defer.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Usually we say, how long would you like this to be deferred?
Till our next meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, deferral doesn't have discussion. Ms. Only, will you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4E.
Wouldn't go any
Comprehensive
higher than.
Transportation Improvement Plan with capital improvement project budgets and proposed projects for fiscal year 21. That's pages 57 through 279 of our packet.
Bad for work to get on my feet. I've tried to put the family back together.
I will open the floor first to my colleagues for questions and discussion.
You let me, my daughter. Excuse me. Go ahead, take your time. Take your time, go ahead. Hello? I'll wait for you. Hello?
Hi, Ms. Kennedy, we can hear you. Do you have?
Oh, okay. Okay, I just wanted to be sure you could hear me.
Yes. Okay, I'm not really seeing any hands or seeing any discussion on this one. Is there a motion for the CTIP item?
Miss Teresa, I apologize. I thought that there was going to be some additional comments from staff. Was I mistaken?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't open it up to staff first. I opened it up to council members first. But I can open it up to our staff to address this item before council addresses it.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. We have on the line with us certainly Dr. Thompson, who oversees the Public Works Department, but also we have members of the Public Works Department as well. In your packet, what you have is an item related specifically to Public Works. And I say that because there were questions about whether or not these items touched on any matters related to the penny. They do not. I know that they touch on any funding related to the penny. These are specific projects related to the ordinance that the county has in place. I believe it's under Chapter 21-6 and Chapter 21-21. But I'll let Dr. Thompson and Director Maloney address this matter appropriately.
Thank you, Administrator Brown. We have Director Maloney. He will provide an overview and will be able to answer any questions regarding this item.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. This is Director Maloney. Back in May 4th, we provided a council work session, and we've taken it to the next step, which actually identifies specific projects for fiscal year 21 by name, by length, and by cost, so that we have know that we're working within our budget. Public Works budget is based on the road maintenance fund. And that is something we can rely on and the county has control over. Our plan is to gain approval on projects that are contained within this CTIP, hopefully at the November meeting, and then take these projects to the County Transportation Committee in December at their December scheduled meeting, gain approval there, and return to council in February, hopefully with a refreshed road maintenance fund budget of about $2.5 million. With that, we would take on new projects. Sidewalk project recommendations would come into play in the February meeting. Additional road maintenance projects like these, and potentially a challenging dirt road project. So with that, we do go over a lot of information that's for the operation of the department, for our road work, and going through the functions of the department in the road maintenance, how they interface with engineering, special services, and we get into other departments. In that, we do list, we did reach out to the transportation department for their upcoming projects on dirt road paving, and asked for a list of those. And we also asked what they have coming up for fiscal year 21 on road resurfacing projects. And there's a reason why we asked them for specific mileages on all the roads that they're doing and council districts. We also asked for sidewalk construction that they're doing as well. It kind of turns back to what does Public Works have as a resource. On page 9 of our packet, we talk about the different funding resources we have available. Section 6, we go through our divisional goals for road improvements, again, meant to be assignments all the way to the crews for each division and what we're trying to accomplish for the year. And then the importance of our budget comes up on page 11, section 7, essentially, hopefully trying to get to a $5 million amount per year. And that would only depend on if we can also put CTC into the mix with C funds. So what we have is about $2.5 million in the road maintenance fund. In this request, we're asking for $2.3 million. Of that, on page 12 of our packet, we have pavement preservation with a budget of $850,000. And with that work, we're looking at roads that we found from the past pavement evaluation that were in condition good enough to preserve. Once roads fail to a certain level, the only type of maintenance for that is road resurfacing or even worse, going to road reconstruction. For those that can fall within road resurfacing, we're looking at 1.4 million, 1.45 on road resurfacing and repairs. And we've listed the subdivisions, the lineal feet and council district for those projects, as well as the preservation projects. The reason we're showing council districts and road lengths is because in chapter 21, as we talked about back in May, over a 5-year period, we want to make sure we're hitting all the council districts evenly per the pro rata. Each council district in these areas are to get their lane miles divided by the total mile as a pro rata of the money spent. So we are going to keep track of that. We reached out to the penny to understand what road resurfacing they were doing so we could start to fill those holes where there may be districts that need more attention based on that. And certainly we're using the data from the CPIs, the pavement indexes, to pick out those roads. We do show on page 14 at the end a budget of $350,000 planned. That could grow with more CTC funds if they're available. But again, we would come in the February meeting with sidewalk construction recommendations for you and the council. I entertain any questions.
Thank you, Director Maloney. Looks like I've got a couple of hands up. Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Maloney, and thank you for the time that we spent talking about this program. Per our previous conversation, a few quick things. What we talked about today and what you presented here is that these road preservations and road resurfacing are based on the ordinance and the pro rata for each district. My concern that I just want to raise again for everyone's benefit that I really want us to consider is what are we going to do from a proactive perspective as we look at dirt roads moving forward, understanding that they're expensive, understanding that it's difficult. Right now we have every single resident of Richland County who is paying into the road maintenance fund, whereas these funds are only divided among paved roads. So if you happen to live in an area where you have a lot of unpaved roads, you're continuing to pay for the benefit of something that you are not necessarily receiving to the same degree. So again, I understand that it's very expensive to pave roads. I understand that we don't have a magic solution, but I want to make sure that as we look at how we're going to address our roads proactively moving forward, that that's a consideration that we keep in mind. And then my question, though, you mentioned that you would come back to us from a sidewalk perspective for recommendations. My question would be, what criteria are you going to be using to make those recommendations? Is it going to be based on what we talked about previously at our work session, or is it going to be the old process of whichever residents complained about sidewalks would get new sidewalks? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The sidewalk policy is based on links to school, number one, links to parks, number two. Then you have to take into account the volume of use, the demand, as kind of separating those. If you have two of the same situations and you can only afford one. Well, our plan, though, is to take projects like that, and if we can't afford to do them now, not to erase the list, but to keep the list, as funding becomes available with CTC, and and that's how we've done it in the past. When we go to CTC for additional funding for sidewalks, they have that same policy. It's schools, recreational facilities, so it doesn't have to be a destination to that, but it needs to create a link to other sidewalks that have that kind of destination point. It's kind of following in the nature of the Safe Routes to School program from that aspect.
Thank you. Newton, do you have any further questions? Okay, great. I think Mr. Manning has his hand up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I be reminded of the source of these funds?
The source of the road maintenance fund is $20 every time on your annual vehicle registration. That is what is staffing road maintenance division at Public Works, the engineering time.
Excuse me, sir. So if you don't have a car, you don't pay it?
If you don't register a car, you don't pay it.
Thank you.
Yes. And then of course, when we're looking for the external fund from that county fund with CTC, it's gas tax.
Thank you.
Ms. Horatio, may I ask a quick question?
Yes, Ms. Myers.
So in harmony, I too am troubled by the way we are apportioning the funds here. I understand the statutory formula, but what it means is if you have, as Ms. Newton said, if you're driving your car over more dirt roads in Richland County to get to a paved road, you are paying essentially to upkeep the paved roads and do maintenance on those roads, and you're getting a lesser benefit, even though you're paying the same amount. I would ask that Dr. Thompson, you and your staff and Mr. Brown look at whether or not that statute needs to be amended so that we are looking at all the roads and not just the paved roads, because this does seem to disadvantage and disproportionately tax people who live in rural areas in Richland County where we have not figured out the dirt road paving project. Thank you.
May I address that, ma'am?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So we're asking for $2.3 million in maintenance funds for a fraction this year, for a fraction of our 600 miles of paved roads. We have about 215 miles of unpaved roads, and we put in about $3 million of our maintenance fund towards that every year. So I understand it's not the same equity in what you're getting, but and I would love to put an end to that and have them all paved and focus on one operation. But yeah, with the motor grader operators, the crews, the ditch cleaning, clearing cutback ditches and the various operation, it's running over $3 million a year on that operation to preserve those dirt roads. And I understand that, you know, a dirt road's a dirt road, but we're definitely putting a lot of maintenance time into those.
Respectfully, sir, that's the problem. Those people don't want the dirt roads. They want them paved. And so respectfully, I appreciate what you're saying, but that does not answer the larger issue, which is when are we going to come up with a plan to do what we've promised people we're going to do? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I was going to say, Mr. Manny, you still have your hand up, or you have it up again. You're recognized.
Thank you. I move that we recommend to council approval the C-tip with the existing budget distribution and the proposed projects for FY21.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll have Ms. Only call the roll.
Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Sorry, just looking at my agenda here. So that brings us to number 5, items pending analysis. No action required. 5A is I move to evaluate affordable housing options to include the option of establishing an affordable housing trust fund for Richland County as a benefit to the public. That's Horatio, and we are still working on that item. 5B is I move to direct the county attorney to work with the county administrator to research and draft an absentee landlord ordinance. The ordinance should provide potential remedies for individuals who violate county ordinances and provide via supplemental documentation a comprehensive review of the legal impacts potentially associated with the adoption of such an ordinance. That's from Ms. Newton and Ms. Dickerson. I believe we are still working on that item. And then item C is move to engage a third-party consultant to undertake work on Richland Renaissance, which was approved 11-0 by this council in early 2019. Staff has chosen to postpone this council-approved project, which would alleviate serious facility constraints and result in savings over time, as the county would not spend money on short-term repairs, but on long-term needed facilities planning and construction. That's from Ms. Myers. I do have a question about that item as to, I'm sorry I didn't ask it before, but why is this item in development and services? And what kind of pending analysis are we, would this committee be considering? Is there, if anyone could, from staff or administration?
Yes, ma'am. I would just simply say that the item was sent to the committee, if I'm not mistaken, and in terms of what analysis we would need in order to get a third-party contractor, that would involve a procurement process. So that's my short answer, council member.
So is that who's doing the analysis?
Yeah.
No, sir. We don't have a third-party contractor to do the analysis. So that would be part of what has to happen. We would have to get a third-party contractor in order to comply with what this motion is saying.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown, but the item is under pending analysis. So who's doing the analysis right now?
I think the answer to your question is there's no analysis based on the term analysis, sir.
Then why is it under this item in the agenda?
I believe it was put under there because it's not an item for action that has something for the council members to vote on in this meeting. That would be my understanding of why, that there was only two places where it could be, and this would be other place.
As Mr. Manning, can I speak as the maker of the motion really quickly?
Please.
It seems to me as the maker of the motion that what we're asking for is a council vote as to whether or not you all should do. And so it should have been under action items for a vote of the body as to whether or not they send it to the council. And then you all would send it to procurement to prepare the document rather than putting it again in a holding pattern, which has been the problem with Renaissance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. I just want to be really mindful of time. We're at 6:01. So at this point, we may need to take up this item later. Is there a move for adjournment?
So move.
I'll second it. Ms. Only, will you call the roll for adjournment?
Yes, ma'am. Horatio,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
No.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.